English translation. Clarification of what the FIGU Free Interest Group Universal represents by Billy Edward Albert Meyer. Billy Edward Albert Meyer.
The association FIGU Freie Interessengemeinschaft Universell is not affiliated to any worldly or religious faith, and with its teaching of the truth, teaching of the creation energy, teaching of the life, aims to help human beings on earth, if they want to turn to the teaching of their own free will and decision, to learn and follow it. This, without indoctrination, any kind of influence, persuasion, and without any kind of compulsion to learn the truth and to truly be themselves. As a result, every human being can become fully aware of their own thoughts, control their own feelings, make their own correct decisions, and act accordingly. This can be done without the influence of worldly or religious beliefs, without delusions of faith and only illusory thinking, but with clear conscious thoughts as well as the resulting controlled feelings, decisions, and actions. These values can only and absolutely be learnt personally, in the form of the great values of ethics and morality, which alone guarantee that peace, freedom, solidarity, compassion, respect, spontaneity, financial independence, trust, openness, fun, privacy, security, creativity, happiness, modesty, optimism, family orientation, health, happiness and happiness can be achieved in a wise manner. Family orientation, kindness and friendship, perseverance, perfection, success, accuracy, fidelity and professionalism, but never violence, war, hatred or racism, never slander, lies or deceit, and also never revenge, retaliation, murder and manslaughter or anything negative or wrong. The teaching of the truth, teaching of the creation energy, teaching of the life, unlike any worldly or religious belief, is not designed for faithful devotion. It is designed to bring about truthfulness through one's own clear observation, self-hearing, personal realization, unclouded, conscious, crystal clear and very own thoughts. From these, corresponding unclouded feelings are formed, which prove that the human being alone perceives reality and its truth as an effective reality at all times. This usually leads to the realization of the feeling of really living and being in the midst of life, whereby good and evil are recognized in their truth. Awareness of life is not, by and large, the word for the feeling of life and how human beings can effectively feel life. However, how he really feels and senses himself in his life every day, how he effectively perceives reality, negatively or pleasantly positively, is basically determined by himself. Life is something positive in and of itself. But this does not apply to the life of every human being, because the majority of humanity associates its attitude to life with a religious and therefore also a worldly belief. Moreover, he does so with something that for him is extremely associated with unpleasant and negative things, such as false views, feelings, and illusory thoughts, especially when he is preoccupied with religious phrases, which usually corresponds to illusory thinking and meaningless thoughts, which gives human beings a religious belief feeling and a religious belief happiness that they experience. A real and true feeling of life, which is not produced in a deceptive belief-based and therefore religion-worldly way, spontaneously gives real joy, true peace, real and great energy and strength, which effectively results from true love of life and warmth, just as true life in its effective experience is also radiated by this itself. This self-instruction of the central, sustainable, extra-fundamental, which is defined by the human being himself and applied consciously and voluntarily, creates his true feeling of life, which is sufficient for him to lead his life, so that he really has such a true feeling of life which conveys the values of ethics and morality to him in such a way that these are a natural state of life for him. This state is sufficient for him to lead a true, full, enjoyable, and happy life, to which, however, only the utilization of the central sustainable extra fundamental contributes, if it is not only effective temporarily and partially, but always. A true attitude to life alone also has a considerable influence on one's own environment. The true attitude to life is actually in every human being, but everyone must first learn to awaken and understand it. They are already naturally equipped with it in the womb, they just have to expand and establish it after birth. Through his curiosity, with love and from experience, he can make it his conscious purpose in life, whereby he can spread it as part of his personality, according to his feelings. His direct and indirect environment is significantly influenced by his true attitude to life, although it does not depend on it, but it is blatantly changed for the better by it and cannot be clouded or stifled. It is therefore an absolutely lowly intelligent assertion that human beings always take their problems with them, because this is not true if they endeavor to determine their own thinking in life instead of allowing themselves to be indoctrinated by the negative aspects of their fellow human beings and the environment. So he must not simply disregard and banish his naturally given positive attitude to life, but must awaken it within himself and learn to mold and shape it so as not to expose it to the attacks of the environment. By getting rid of the negative, possibly from upbringing, such as false self-education and the influences and indoctrinations of the entire environment, but thereby forming everything correct in the depths of his character, he also gives birth to the true feeling of life within himself. When human beings learn to consciously defend themselves mentally and emotionally against the negative, with all the values of ethics and morality, by removing the wrong and incorrect, then they form within themselves a treasure trove of positively connoted, that is to say, affirmative and favorable feelings about life. When human beings, who have simply lived their lives up to now, embark on a search for the meaning of life, they can carefully open themselves up to ethics and morality by learning the true and whole values. These are not necessarily permanent problems, but rather a life-loving and secure treasure that conveys a positive, genuine, and true attitude to life. This conveys a tremendous amount of energy, strength, qualities, drive, joy, freedom, love, joie de vivre and passion, etc. This feeling of life and the life force associated with it can only be prevented from flowing if the human being disregards it and does not consciously maintain it. The feeling of life does not consist in self-abandonment, but in the self-initiative of learning and applying all the values of ethics and morality on all conceivable levels of life. The treasure chest of all ethics and morals is filled with all the values that are essential for survival, and is a treasure on which human beings sit unnoticed and sneak through their existence unsaturated. A treasure chest full of money and jewelry does not constitute values that are a recognizable value in the totality of ethics and morals. However, these must first be awakened and learnt by human beings, for they are probably given by nature lying fallow, but they must first be made recognizable and learnt by human beings and then applied all round. What does a human being gain from a hidden treasure that he neither sees nor uses, does not share with fellow human beings, and thus only ever suffers damage in life or constantly risks it? Spontaneously, he usually tends to want to share his life with someone, whereby it often seems that one person needs the other just as much as the person wanting to share needs himself in terms of self-recognition and self-activity. However, the human being who appears to be the poorest very often carries the most valuable treasures within him, but these are so well hidden to protect them from intruders that they cannot find them or steal them. However, it is a mammoth task for any righteous human being to carry this inner treasure alone, which is why he cannot simply leave it lying around. As a result, he often gives it away to his neighbor without a care in the world and is betrayed in return, especially when he gives away honest love and is explicitly hurt in this respect. But one's own self has the need for love, as well as for the like, that is to say, the need and want of life, which should above all satisfy the self-like, that is to say, the self-want in self-confident modesty. If the rattling treasure chest of the totality of ethics and morals is now considered, which in the course of life becomes heavier and heavier in the baggage of destiny of human beings, because everything burdens them more and more, then this is because they do not follow the values of ethics and morals in their entire value content. However, all the good values of the attitude to life, which are given by nature, must be recognized, learned and worked through, and also applied and lived, because only in this way do they fulfill the human being's humanity. The true attitude to life cannot therefore be left to lie fallow as if in a museum, but must be effectively realized internally, and also externally through all our actions. It begins with the perception and truthful assessment of reality, actions, and behavior. But it is also based in the human being itself, in its all-round giving, in its emotional orientation and happiness, in respect, in family orientation, spontaneity, openness, fun, general knowledge, and independence. But the values are also present in all areas of the private sphere, including financial security and health, as well as in creativity, compassion, freedom, friendship, and friendliness, perseverance and modesty, as well as optimism, trust, success, professionalism and perfection, accuracy and loyalty, etc., are also anchored in the many values that belong without exception to the area of ethics and morals. This, although the totality of ethics and morals includes many more of the values that are mentioned, and, when applied and acted upon, are recognizable and visible to fellow human beings in the world. When fellow human beings on Earth look at these realities as they are applied by individual human beings who exemplify these values, they learn from them, draw on them, and admire them, with the emerging urge to become, learn, and act in this way themselves. However, caution is advised against becoming personally powerful and degenerating, as human beings tend, as a result of many years of indoctrination of this kind by the environment, which they are not consciously aware of, to believe themselves to be greater and more clever, and to behave accordingly than this is really beneficial and beneficial overall. Moreover, an auction of the treasure is not worthy, because its true value will only be recognized by those human beings who take the trouble to learn the very heavy burden of ethical and moral values for themselves. However, those who believe that they can easily acquire these values by stealing them run the risk of failure if they do not realize that everything has to be learned with great effort, and they do not consciously decide to do so, and also make a conscious effort to learn everything themselves. This is to be done respectfully and carefully, because violence destroys everything right from the start in such a way that learning becomes impossible. There is also never anyone who can help, because the treasure of values that are given in the totality of ethics and morals is to be built up and formed by human beings alone and independently. However, he must do this alone in all things, with the honorable intention of taking care of the treasure to be built up to the best of his ability. Only in this way will he one day be enthroned above all that is negative, always reminding himself to be above much that is negative in a wise way, throughout all the times of his life and existence, but constantly remembering that he can only lead a true life as good as he has learnt from, and also practices all the values of ethics and morality. Human beings should never see themselves as fully saturated with the overall values of ethics and morals, for they can never complete their own entire treasure trove of ethics and morals in their earthly life. This is because he is surrounded throughout his life by ignoramuses who always and again strike out at this and that thing, event or other occurrence, etc., and with their illogical, mindless and irresponsible actions, speech and behavior, etc., often or sometimes drive even the willingly best learner to the edge of his control and patience. The majority of humanity has never heard of how great, comprehensive, and highly important the values of ethics and morality are for human beings in general, and how these are also not simply limited to matters of behavior and dealing with fellow human beings and society, etc. The great feeling of happiness that one has in one's own life is not only a feeling of happiness. Their own great sense of happiness, freedom, peace, and joy is so far removed from the majority of humanity that, as a result of their ignorance, indoctrination, and many other wrong and evil things, they live life as a very vulnerable burden carrier, effectively wasting away as a very vulnerable burden bearer. In this wise, countless people cannot develop the effective feeling of life, and therefore also cannot perceive it, but simply exist without it and through existence. And it happens just like in a museum, where there is a silent and motionless existence but no life, where there is no inspiration, no development, and no evolution. The true feeling of life is nothing more than a complexity for countless human beings. But may you now find and work out yours through the teaching of the truth, teaching of the creation energy, teaching of the life. This so that, like a sparkling crown, the realization of the reality and its truth, as well as the effective reality and the true feeling of life, become conscious and clear to you, with all the concepts that reflect the feeling of truth and the reality of reality to you. You are no longer alone if you want to consciously and willingly work out the true feeling of life and become yourself, for you will find all that is necessary for you and for learning in the FIGU writings. However, it is necessary for you to know that learning the whole thing is neither easy nor simple, and is inevitably connected with freeing yourself from all religious and worldly beliefs and devoting yourself mentally and emotionally in a completely neutral way to the diverse content of the teaching of the truth, teaching of the creation energy, teaching of the life. And only if you also consciously and clearly consider everything yourself, independently demanding your own thoughts in order to explore, recognize and understand further reality and its truth, and thus the effective reality, will you be able to gain the insights, knowledge, and skills that will help you to become a true human being.
Alliances by Bridget Keller, Switzerland. On the 20th of May 2023, we discussed, among other things, the questions received from passive members that were to be answered at the General Assembly. One of these questions related to covenant love. On this occasion, Billy explained to us that there are effectively countless types of covenants that we should think about. This was very enlightening, and it encouraged us to see many things in this respect in a different and more objective light than we had been used to. Here is my attempt to summarize what I heard in my own words. A covenant is not limited to a covenant love in relation to two persons who are devoted to each other in love and eternal fidelity. This is not because the basic covenant begins with oneself, namely in such a way that the human being enters into a covenant with himself clearly and intelligently, as well as good and honestly. This must be in such a way that they get along with themselves in every respect, as well as with their fellow human beings and the entire environment, all ecosystems, the planet, nature, and its fauna and flora, and manage their lives in a good and wise way in connection with everything. However, if this alliance with oneself is not established and lived, then a failure to lead one's life in some wrong, bad, evil, self-damaging, or even self-destructive way becomes inevitable. Every human being experiences alliances in many variations every day. Parents, children, siblings among themselves, friends or antagonists, both in kindergarten and throughout life until death. Teachers, students, employers, subordinates, people working in their profession with the entire company staff, as well as every active or inactive person with every other human being with whom they also come into contact. Public transport users with other public transport users, as well as with the driver of the respective vehicle. Inhabitants of a country with their fellow inhabitants, as well as with all human beings on the planet, with the entire flora and fauna. Yes, even the snail that nibbles on a salad is in an alliance with the salad in question, even if it is not to our taste. When we cook, we enter into an alliance with all the food and ingredients we use and creatively transform their forms into a different state. What was raw is cooked, roasted, steamed, and in turn combines with the other ingredients to create flavorsome dishes that, ideally, give pleasure to those who eat them, fill them up, and strengthen them so that they can turn to their own respective tasks with renewed vigor. By this, I mean that everyone is permanently in an alliance with something or someone, which can have positive or negative connotations. How is sexual contact to be categorized in this context? It is also an alliance, even if it is only for a moment or a night, whether it is forced or voluntary, with or without emotional involvement. We can be in a partnership alliance, for example, but at the same time maintain or be forced to maintain many, countless other alliances in a single day. Pleasant, unpleasant, instructive, helpful, stirring, moderately important, unchangeable, such as with the billions of invisible microbes in our home or the fine dust in the air. None of this passes us by without a trace. Every human being, every animal creature, every plant, whether tiny or gigantic, lives for better or worse in the context of everything else. All the deceased who were once close to us, our alliance with them still exists, just in a different form. The connection with them takes place on the level of thoughts and feelings and can nevertheless be complex, wistful and grateful, pleasant, loving and all-encompassing. We are far too little aware of all this, and yet it would be worthwhile to consciously deal with it. You can take the thread even further. The room I'm currently in, the window through which I can see outside. How many craftsmen must have been involved so that I can now sit here in warmth and comfort, and not outside, exposed to the weather under a tree, with which I could also maintain an alliance, or mobile phones, which are commodities for all of us. The planet released mineral resources for them. The lowest paid human beings extracted them, and other human beings in turn put the components together. And now the little things work almost by magic and are in our pockets. Is it too much to imagine a kind of alliance with all these human beings, materials, and factors? In any case, you can ponder and reflect on the fact that nothing happens by chance, as we are all connected to everything in an alliance. And the fact that I am now putting these words on paper here leads back to my alliance with the FIGU, with Billy, who inspires me through his writings and words and his active example to think about such important things in life. Something else is going through my mind. The many unfortunate human beings who are currently in war zones or other areas of misery and hardship. They are human beings just like us, who live in peace and relative prosperity because they tick, feel, suffer, and rejoice just like us. And so I think I am also in an alliance with them and should do what I can to help counterbalance the misery in the world, even if it is only through my conscious thoughts of peace, harmony, and solidarity.